Welcome to the 30-Minute Podcast, full topics in half an hour for the intellectually curious. I'm Mariposa.
And as always, the IZZ.
And what are we talking about today? Lots going on out here in the world, but what are we focused on?
We talking about the 4th of July?
No.
Tax-free weekend for back to school?
Definitely not talking about that. The school is questionable right now. And I say that because I don't have kids at home, like driving me.
So go ahead and tell us what you want to get into. What do we?
So there is a quote unquote holiday that comes up this time of year. People celebrate, do cookouts, get excited. But is it a celebration?
Oh, you mean you want to recognize Juneteenth?
Juneteenth. Yeah, let's talk about it.
Well, before we recognize Juneteenth, we have to make sure that we have the information about the history of Juneteenth.
Yes.
So September the 22nd, 1862, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation that would go into effect 100 days from the signing of it. So on January 1st, 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation would free all of the former slaves, and you would have freed men and freed women. Before we talk about that, a lot of the former slaves would always get information or gather in the churches. So we have to recognize Watch Night, because Watch Night was the actual beginning or the start of the time pass, or the time waiting for the information to pass for the stroke of midnight to hit, so that they would become or move from former slaves to freed men and women. Yeah. And then we look, 6 months later, and Juneteenth is a celebration in Texas, but actually the general was actually giving the last of the information. It was the last proclamation that the slaves were free, when actually they had been free since January 1st.
Yeah, and it was quite a gap in that time, because they were still out there working, acting like nothing had changed, whereas other people were.
Yes, slave owners were still getting that free labor.
Nobody was giving them the hip to the deal to say, hey, you're free. That's why I have a little trouble with Juneteenth, because is it a celebration? Is that a time when I should be out barbecuing? Is that another example of us finding out about something late?
So do we look at it as a celebration of the freedom of slaves, or do we look at it as a wake-up call and a warning on staying abreast of information and knowing who you are and what you are in the scheme of society? Yeah,
well, that's the $1 million question. So I would love to hear some opinions on it.
But hey, let's look at, in the spirit of Juneteenth, let's go with what it's talking about, the emancipation, which you told me emancipation was what?
Freeing your mind.
Okay, so let's look at we're going to free our mind in the realm of activism over this series. We're going to look at freeing your mind in the way you spend, and financially freeing your mind. We're going to talk about spiritual freedom. We might even get into some risque types of freedom. But right now we're going to talk about freeing our community and making sure that we have access.
Yes.
Since we're talking about emancipation, those individuals, those freed slaves, did not have access to the information. But we're going to talk about access to information and resources in the community. So this starts our emancipation series with nonprofits.
Okay, the nonprofit sector. So we have a wonderful guest here today to share with us. So you do the intros.
As I have a personal connection with this individual, the Floetrist, she's very active and speaks on the issues of African American and Blacks in the United States. But I also know her from being the founder of a wonderful nonprofit consulting company by the name of Youthnique Inc. Let's give a round of applause to Torri Hicks.
Yay! Give it up for Dr. Hicks. Hey, how's it going?
Thank you. Glad to be here today.
Awesome. So glad you could make it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into this nonprofit space?
Sure. I've been working for a nonprofit for as long as I can remember, and started back when I was graduated from Michigan State, Spartans, and started working for the Ingham County Health Department. There, I was working for their nonprofit, teaching sex education to middle and high school students, which was
risque.
Oh, okay, there you go. Okay.
Yes. And from then on, I just really found my niche. in the nonprofit sector and giving back and helping people really turn their visions for programming into reality.
Wow, that sounds so cool. So tell us a little bit more about your business and who you service.
So my company is called Youthnique. It's interesting because a lot of people will say, oh, do you only serve youth? Is that the only thing that you do?
Right.
And really the youth part of it is more of a youthful nature and strategy.
Okay.
The goal is really to help businesses and nonprofits keep up to date with the youthful strategies, the technologies and resources to really make them thrive. And so we assist in the start and expansion of businesses and nonprofits. And that's everything from filing the paperwork to strategic business planning to your board, whatever you need to really lay a strong foundation and to thrive.
That's really great because I find a lot of people have wonderful ideas, but they don't really know how to put it all together from the business perspective. So that sounds like a just phenomenal service that you're offering. And very much so needed in the community to help bridge the gap between the idea and the reality of it being a professional business.
It's definitely a blessing. I think that most people are either the visionary or the structure. And I think I've just been blessed to understand both sides of it, to be able to have the vision, see the vision for the client, but also understanding the steps that are required in order to fulfill it.
That's awesome.
So since we're talking about emancipation and freeing your mind, I want to go in and just jump on into it. Well, let's look at with the climate of ethnic and racial tensions right now, or let's just say unease. What would be your view on Blacks and nonprofits?
I think that nonprofits are no different than businesses. I think we often think of nonprofit as no money. Oh, they're nonprofit, they're charity. But in terms of their structure and their needs, they're not different than businesses. So if you think about the climate of Black businesses and their needs and the struggle of Black businesses, I believe it's the same.
Okay. So then would you say that there's a difference in the treatment of people of color in that space? In what ways would you say, and just as far as how they're viewed as a nonprofit in their relationships with donors and funders? Or what are your feelings and views on how Blacks are treated in that nonprofit space?
I definitely think that there's discrimination in that space of businesses and nonprofits, and I'll include them as the same. I think in terms of getting the support, the funding.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Funding
is extremely difficult for us to be able to get the funding to really grow and fulfill our mission and to buy. And, the first thing I think of as a woman is the beauty supply industry,
right.
And being able to even tap into that industry and the discrimination in that industry of being able to get products and services.
Well, I'm not going to take us down memory lane, but I have to give a shout out, give a kudos to the organization that I love so dear, COG Inc. Yes. Because remember, we had the kids go down. A lot of people don't know on Auburn Avenue, there is the Madam C.J. Walker Museum and a radio station. And then in Missouri, there is Turnbull, because the story that I saw on, what was that, Netflix? Was that Netflix? That was not the true story of Miss Annie Turnbull. She was actually a millionaire before Madam C.J. Walker was very instrumental. So I like the fact that you brought that up. Yes. So I want to know, how would you saying that, what are one or two things that you would say that we need to do as people of color in that space? And what do you think is the Black influence on the nonprofit space?
One of the things that I have strived to do in my company is at the very start of building anything is to focus on the structure. I think that by focusing on the structure in the very beginning, as you know, Dr. Cog, with your strategic planning and your business planning, you lay the foundation to answer questions before they're asked. The desire initially is, let's go make it look good. Let's go get the logo. Let's go make the website, all that stuff, because it looks good.
Right.
But it doesn't take care of the foundation. And so sometimes when we do those things first and we focus on that so much in the marketing, we get disappointed because we're not getting the funding or the responses that we want.
Don't mean to interrupt you on that, but I remember that I got my logo while you were working on the strategic plan, because I let Youthnique actually handle that for COG Inc. So I have to say that does reign true, and that was 8 years ago. To 2012. And
Wow.
2013.
2009. Wow.
It's been that long. So yes, you said the same thing to me that day. So I know that you really believe that, because I was so gung ho on. I need a logo. I need my website. So people, it doesn't matter if they go to a website and there's no content, there's no information. But I'm in a group, Blacks in Nonprofit. Shout out to Blacks in Nonprofit, and they asked a question about that, and I can still pull up my strategic plan from COG on my phone right now. I still have it. I'll show it to you later a little bit, awesome. Mariposa. That's awesome. In case you trying to get a nonprofit, you asking all these questions.
I am asking questions because I'm intellectually curious. And you sound like you have a wonderful thing going on. So we just want more people to know about it. So this is awesome. So I guess my next question would be, from when you started, because you guys just went down memory lane, to now, these Corona times, or whatever, you want to characterize 2020 as, because there's a lot of different things we could call this time frame, these last 6 months. What have you had to change to adapt to current times from the way you run your nonprofit? Because I find that a lot of nonprofits start up and then they phase out. You don't really hear anything else. And so I don't know what that magic formula is or why, people can't sustain it. It could be some of the reasons that you cited. Maybe they didn't get funding or they didn't have their business plan. So I'm just curious, how have you found longevity, and what have you had to change to be able to adapt to current times?
Part of it is because education is key. I do not believe you have to go to a university. I believe you need education and training for your purpose and for your passion.
Right.
I went to school for mental health and some other things. I didn't go to school for business.
Okay.
And starting a business was new to me. The process was new. And so within my journey, I had to figure it out. And along my trying to figure it out, I met a mentor and someone who taught me what to do and the steps. That is why it has taken me as long as it has to get to this point that we're at now, because I didn't know what to do.
Okay.
And I didn't have a me or my company when I started to tell me, hey, do this, do this, do this. What's next? What should be next? So I feel like a lot of businesses and nonprofits, one, the education, if you can take a class in business or hire a consultant or have a mentor that can help you avoid some of the mistakes that I made trying to figure it out.
Right.
Is extremely helpful in the process.
So let's talk a little bit more about that hire a consultant piece that you just said. What I find a lot, whether it's in a nonprofit space or whichever space it is, people want a lot of free advice. So how have you been able to successfully monetize your business and keep your sphere of influence the same, still have a nice network in your friend group or whatever, but have people to understand that they need to pay for your services?
I sowed a lot of free seeds in the beginning. Okay. I did. Partly because I was still trying to figure it out. So I needed to make sure that what I was figuring out was worth the monetary side.
Right.
And then once I understood what my value was as a consultant and as a company, then I felt confident to place a price to it. And people that frown upon paying, they don't understand what they're paying for. They think that they're just paying for advice.
Right.
But no, you're paying for that person or that company's expertise, the years, for me, 10 years of my life preparing for this. You have to understand what comes with that. And so although our company, we provide the service in addition to the consulting, it's worth everything that I've put my life into. And I think when you look at a consultant, whatever field it may be in, you have to think about that. They put their life into this vehicle to provide services to you so you can thrive. And it's worth whatever they're charging.
Wow. Well, very well said. And I would just echo the part of even learning how to navigate getting funding, because you can go online and be on there all day looking up grants or whatever and still not really get to any real conclusions and not have any applications in or things of that nature. Because I've known other people who went that route with the nonprofit and it just wasn't fruitful. So I would say even just that one piece is worth paying for, let alone all the other aspects of the things that you do. So, I mean, word to the wise, anybody listening that was thinking that, oh no, I could just do it myself. I mean, yeah, Google is your friend, but at some point in time, you have to do that time, money, ROI, and then seek expertise. So.
Okay, so, and just hearing some tidbits, I have a question. Do you think that you have changed, or the focus of Youthnique has changed from, you said 2009 when you started? It was 2009 to now, so that's 11 years in the game. Do you think maybe, if not your mission, maybe your focus or how you serve the nonprofit community has changed?
Absolutely. I think that's what makes it Youthnique, and every business should be that way, because you have to evolve. Things have definitely changed. Wow. In 11 years, July will be 11 years. Things have changed in terms of the way people receive information. They process information, how they operate via social media. So you are going to have to evolve. And our company definitely has evolved from being more consulting to more of a product service base. In our day and time, people don't like to read a whole lot. So they want to know how they get the information, how long does it take, how much does it cost, and they want that information as quick as possible. So definitely a lot of changes have been made in terms of what we provided way back with COG. Definitely more of a quick turnaround service base to get them the results quicker.
So you're basically saying you've gone from more relational services to product services.
Yes.
Okay.
During that time, I think with COG, we were there hands-on. I think that was back when Kendra Owens was with us.
Shout out to Kendra Owens. If you're out there listening in the space.
I had an amazing team that trusted me in the startup phase. But back then, just the hands-on work, but observing clients, their feedback, their testimonies, it just got to a point where they just wanted results. And the best way to do that was to transition to more of the product service space.
We want to know more about the other piece, that activism piece, that Floetrist. I want to hear more about that, but we're going to do that after we take a quick break. We're going to go and do our shout out to our sponsors.
Yes, shout out to our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Our small business spotlight is on Goals and Obligations. Goals and Obligations creates hand-poured, custom-branded scented candles, warmers, and tarts. Used in homes, dorms, offices, they are perfect for all spaces. Available in a variety of signature scents, my favorite being that DSM, but you can get any of the current 15 in the GNO collection, Goals and Obligations. Goals and Obligations, you can find them on Facebook or IG. Look for them on at GOALSANDOBLIGATIONS. Goals and Obligations. You can also hashtag them at Goals and Obligations. Goals and Obligations, freshening your world. We're back on the 30-minute podcast.
Yes.
Full topics in half an hour for the intellectually curious. Yes. So, we were making the transition. We were talking about nonprofits and emancipation and freeing your mind of what a nonprofit is and what you do as a nonprofit consulting company with Youthnique. But you kind of freed your mind and emancipated yourself from that and reinvented yourself or retold your story as the Floetrist. So can you kind of tell us about how that came about? Because I remember when you were saying, I'm stepping away, I'm stepping back. And then all of a sudden, a few months, I saw the Floetrist. So tell me or tell us about that process and who the Floetrist is.
I think the arts, music is in my blood. I grew up in Michigan, near Detroit, home of Motown, family, singers, instruments, all of that stuff. Forced to sing in the choir. It's torture. And it was in my blood, but my mom and my dad and my family really pushed me towards education. So that was, where I went. And so I never really explored or I won't say I didn't explore it. I tapped into it, but didn't stick to it. So clarinet, piano, all that stuff, but it just didn't stick. So I went to school, got my education.
Education if you're in the South. Same thing. In the North is edification.
Yeah.
In the South is education.
Education. But I always loved writing, poetry specifically. So when I came here to Atlanta, the home of the arts.
The Motown of the South.
Yes.
Outcast.
Okay.
Among others.
Goody Mob.
Among others.
Dungeon Family.
Yes.
Among others.
Shout out to Jermaine Dupri too.
Yes.
So deaf. So
To
deaf.
all the Atlanta artists. Okay. it's only a 30-minute podcast. We can't name everybody.
To change true.
So I came here and, was working with nonprofits as I had been and started writing, really focusing on the writing, the poetry side of things, and would go out and perform poetry, and then became passionate about taking the writing to another level. I think for me, the pivotal point in my life was when Trayvon Martin died, murdered. I was working with young Black teens at a nonprofit and was angry. I was angry. I don't even know how else to say that, is I was angry. And so I felt like at that point, it was time to transition to being more vocal with my art. And I wrote a piece called Black Lives Required as a tribute to Trayvon Martin. I wrote it as a poetry piece, and I began to transition into music, met an awesome coach that gave me the confidence. I said, look, I'm a poet, I'm a speaker. If you don't think I can do this thing, tell me right now, because I don't want to be up here trying to fake it. And he really was like, no, T, you got it. You got the juice. Go ahead and move forward. So he guided me. Shout out to my coach, Miguel. And he's helped me transition that poetry piece into my first release, which is Black Lives Required. And so that kind of started the Floetrist movement about educating, loving, and bringing awareness. That is the foundation of the Floetrist.
So you emancipated those feelings of anger and then emancipated them into something productive.
I did, yes. And that's how I release my anger, and that's how I heal, is to get in the studio and to share, get on that mic and spit. That's how
16 bars.
Yeah, sometimes it's more.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So is it all spoken word? Is to music? You have a variety? You got instruments going? What can we expect from the Floetrist if we were to log on to SoundCloud or wherever you are releasing your information? I know you'll tell us.
What's so funny? People are always shocked when they hear me. They're like, oh, I remember Torri, she's so corporate and she's so, this isn't her. Even my own brother, who I'm very close to, we say we're twins. He was like, that's not you. I'm like, that definitely is me. So I am definitely that eclectic person. I've been in the corporate world for so long, and I really had to embrace this side of being eclectic. That's how I describe myself. Because I was that corporate person. Even now, people are like, that's not you. You're not the Floetrist. I'm like, I definitely am.
That's why you had to release some videos, huh?
I did. So I love hard. So I even, after Black Lives Required, I wrote a piece called King. And King is really a tribute to Black men and to uplift them. I was motivated by Kaepernick when he initially took his knee. And so there's some traces of tribute for him in the video, as well as LeBron James, and then also my grandfather, who is my greatest example of a Black man, role model, father, provider, everything. So
that's awesome.
And that you will see my anger in the first one, but there's that love and the awareness.
So we'll place a link to the video in the bio so people can check you out.
Thank you.
Yeah, but tell us more about what you have coming up next as the Floetrist.
So I'm angry again.
Okay.
I'm very angry at the murder and the assassination of George Floyd. So actually, I'm going to go record Black Lives Required 2 today about how I feel about that. It's different than the first one. I think the first one, I focused more on, okay, we need to work together. We need to build as Black people together. We need to do better together. This one is more like, no, y'all need to do better. And so that is my focus on this one. So the anger is back. But then this summer, I'm coming out with something sexy.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
That's the perfect time to get sexy this
Yes.
summer. Fewer clothes, get a little rosé going, and listen to let me just not.
It's for the ladies.
Okay.
This was for the ladies.
I was assuming it was for the ladies. I didn't want to set your scene for
on the
you.
king, but we're coming back with something for the ladies in
That's
the summer.
awesome.
Something sexy for the ladies.
Yeah, can't wait. So tell people where they can find your music.
Sure, I'm at the Floetrist. It's at TheFloetrist on all streaming platforms: Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, Tidal, and then of course on social media at the Floetrist on all social media platforms.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, we want to thank you, Torri, better known as the Floetrist, for coming and joining us on the 30-minute podcast. Full topics in half an hour for the intellectually curious.
I'm Mariposa.
IZZ with our special guest, Torri Hicks. Thank you for joining us.
Peace.